Hi, it's Ray Edwards, and welcome back to my vlog experiment. Hey, thanks for all the reactions and the comments and the thumbs up. I really appreciate your feedback, and I think you're going to like today's episode. Well, I hope so. We'll see. Today's episode is about who should you vote for in the upcoming presidential election. I'm going to tell you, before we finish with this episode, who to vote for, exactly who to vote for. Now, before I do that, let me tell you a little story, a little history with me. Back when I was in radio, I ran a bunch of radio stations, and some of them were news talk. And some of those news talk stations ran a show called The Rush Limbaugh Show. And it was interesting to see that people who listened to that show, a lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them, were what we referred to fondly as Limbroids. In other words, androids who were programmed by Rush Limbaugh. In fact, Rush made no secret about it. He would tell people, he said, "I will not help you learn how to think, I will just tell you what to think," or words to that effect. And it was true. A lot of people who listened to that show had very strongly held views, and they were as dictated by Rush Limbaugh. Not views of their own, but Rush's views parroted back. And if you started to dig, if you got into conversation with those people and asked them, well, why do you believe the things that you believe? Let me ask about this one specific belief you have. Why do you believe that? They couldn't give you an answer, because they had not thought the issue through themselves. They only knew the catchphrases that they learned from Rush to respond back to any questions with. You couldn't get them to show you their reasoning. They couldn't show you their work because they hadn't done any work to figure out their opinions. They just took Rush's opinion as their own. Today, in the current presidential election, I see the same phenomenon, not necessarily with Rush Limbaugh. I'm not in the radio business anymore, so I don't listen to his show anymore, so I have no idea what he's saying or what any of the other talk radio pundits are saying. But I do get involved inadvertently, much to my resistance. I get involved in conversations about the election, and I hear people parroting back phrases that I just sense, I can tell they've heard from somewhere else. And I'm always able to verify this by just asking a few questions about how did they arrive at the conclusion they were just sharing with me, and they can't answer because they haven't thought it through. If you let somebody else do your thinking for you, and that's how you vote in the election, then you have forfeit your right to complain. You can't complain because you didn't think before you voted to begin with. Listen, this is really important. It's important that you think through the issues and you think through the candidates before you cast a vote for the President of the United States of America. Why? Because it determines the destiny of our nation. Think back to the Founding Fathers. How important were these issues to them? How much were they willing to put at risk in order to establish the nation that we enjoy today? How did they build this republic? They did it at the risk of their lives and their families' lives. So it was probably fairly important to them that they get the answers right. In fact, Benjamin Franklin is famous for saying to the other co-conspirators in the American insurrection, he said, "We must all hang together, or we shall surely hang separately." Strong words, but it was true. What they were doing was treasonous to their mother country, England. But they thought that freedom and liberty were important enough that they were willing to risk everything to get it. Are we willing to take those same kinds of risks? I think for most of us the answer is we don't know, because we've never been put to that kind of test. The way we vote, or the way we talk about voting, may get us the irritation or the ire of some friends or some people on Facebook, but we're never really in danger of being hanged by the neck until dead because of our opinion. One thing the Founding Fathers did was they thought deeply about these issues before they rendered a public opinion. And once they did have a public opinion, they wrote about it extensively, and they discussed it extensively because it was an important issue, not a lighthearted or casual one. Before any of us can make an informed, responsible vote for the presidency, we need to have thought through some very deep issues first. We need to know who we are. What's our identity as an individual? Who are you? What are your values? What's your purpose in being on the earth? What's the purpose of your life? What are the reasons why you believe what you believe? What are your values? If you don't know the answers to those questions, how can you possibly know who to vote for? Because you don't know what's important to you, let alone what's important to society at large. You must have, in other words, a philosophy of life before you can develop a philosophy of politics. We can learn so many lessons by remembering history. An ancient Roman writer wrote of the heroism of the Roman Empire and how it was declining as the empire began to fall apart. And he wrote, "All the people desire anxiously is bread and circuses." In other words, the government was keeping the people quiet and calm and subdued by giving them food and entertainment. Does that sound like any society you know of today? Don't buy into the bread and circuses mentality of the current election. Now, I promised you that I would tell you exactly who to vote for by the end of this vlog, and I'm going to do that now. You vote for the person who most accurately represents your values. Values that you have thought through carefully, not just a list of parroted phrases that you learned from someone else, but conclusions you reached on your own through logical, rational thinking. Have you done that? It's not too late. You still can. And I encourage you to do so. And by the way, if you think you're going to abstain, not voting is also a vote. Think about it. I want to leave you with one quote worth note. On March 23rd, 1775, and I'm reading this because I want to get it exactly right, Patrick Henry spoke at St. John's Church in Richmond, Virginia, and he gave a quite eloquent speech which famously ended with these lines: "Is life so dear and peace so sweet that they are to be purchased at the price of chains and slavery? Forbid it, Almighty God. I know not what course others may take, but as for me, give me liberty or give me death." If we had that kind of conviction today, our nation could be changed in a single election. Think carefully, think deeply, and then decide exactly who to vote for the presidency of the United States of America, based on your values and on the thinking that you've already done yourself about these issues. There is still time to do it. Okay, so that's today's vlog. Kind of a heavy subject, but an important one. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave them in the comments below. Give me a thumbs up. Give me a share. And for heaven's sakes, subscribe to these vlogs so you receive them automatically. Just press the subscribe button and you'll be all signed up. Until tomorrow, God bless.